What's the deal with Silicon Valley Bank? Should every developer be concerned? Is this the beginning of a massive collapse of private equity funding, leading to a disaster in the startup tech world? Did my dad ever really love me as much as my brother? These are some of the questions you might be asking yourself about the recent news in the startup world. A massive bank carrying tons of money for startups has just collapsed due to mismanagement and poor timing. But what actually happened to Silicon Valley Bank? And should you, a developer at a startup, actually be concerned? And is this bank failure related to the recent layoffs you've been hearing about? The short answer is kinda, but in order to understand what's going on, let's go over some facts about this bank and what happened to it. Maybe it'll make you feel better, maybe it'll make you feel worse. Either way, remember what G.I. Joe says.
Last one there's the penis pump.
Oh wait, not that clip, this one.
Now we know.
And knowing is half the battle.
G.I. Joe!
Right, knowing is half the battle, so let's get our knowing on. This is the story of Silicon Valley Bank. Now, Silicon Valley Bank has actually been around for quite some time. It was started in 1983, apparently by a couple of Bank of America managers over a game of poker. And I know what you're thinking right now. Wow, these two gentlemen really gave this bank a lot of thought if they came up with the idea over a game of poker. What incredible financial minds these two have. Now, all in all, SVB did really well over the years. And if you couldn't already tell by the name, the main depositors of money in Silicon Valley Bank were startups. Many startups deposited the money they received from private equity into Silicon Valley Bank and would draw on their accounts for day-to-day operations. Think payroll, company expenses, expensive sushi dinners for executives, things like that. Many startups are running as lean as possible. Thus, they are not withdrawing tons of money at a time from their accounts. They're actually trying to draw as little as possible to stay open for longer periods of time. My assumption is that with this understanding, SVB began buying more and more long-term assets, using the money that these startups deposited in their accounts. They bought assets in the form of US Treasuries and mortgage-backed securities. And yes, I mean those mortgage-backed securities. You know, the thing that caused a major global financial meltdown just 15 years ago? I'm sure those guys learned their lesson. In theory, SVB would be able to make money off the deposits they had in their bank as these long-term assets matured. So you already know what happens next. The tech industry continues to do well, there are no layoffs, VC money does not dry up, and the US Treasuries remain stable and are easy to resell because the rates stay low. Oh wait, I'm sorry, I got my notes messed up. It turns out the exact opposite of those things all happened. You see, with inflation becoming a bigger and bigger worry, the US government is essentially trying to get money out of the market using clever techniques like increasing the yield on US Treasury bonds and increasing rates on loans. This caused two major problems with SVB. Increased finance rates on loans causes a steep drop in available funding for startups, thus leading to less startups getting money and in turn, less deposits for Silicon Valley Bank. Also, the long-term US Treasuries that Silicon Valley bought at an average of 1.8% return all of a sudden look really crappy compared to the new US Treasuries paying out around 3% plus. This means that if SVB is ever in a pinch, they're going to have a really tough time selling off their old treasuries when the new ones pay out twice as much. Essentially, they would not have any buyers for their assets. This gave SVB a massive liquidity problem. And eventually, some investors of the bank got spooked. You couple that with management trying to raise more funds and sell off some treasuries at a huge loss.
Then we'll reinvest the earnings into foreign currency accounts with compounding interest and it's gone.
You all of a sudden get a run on the bank. Eventually, the government steps in, deems SVB as insolvent.
I declare bankruptcy!
And the rest is now in the news. So what does this mean for you? If you're working at a startup, are you completely screwed? Thankfully, it appears the US government is going to honor all the deposits from Silicon Valley Bank to prevent a financial meltdown. So hopefully, if your company currently has cash in SVB, they'll still get it back, eventually. And since SVB has a very peculiar client base with massive cash deposits, hopefully this is not a sign of more bank failures to come. Although one question does come to mind. Are other banks highly leveraged in US Treasuries, thus facing liquidity problems? I really hope not. Either way, if you liked this video, please like and subscribe to this channel. And hey, thanks nerds.